Alright, welcome to Real-Time SQL Access for your Salesforce.com data. My name is Sumit Sarkar. I'm a Senior Solution Consultant with Progress DataDirect. This is a session that I gave at Dreamforce in 2012, and the session had sold out within a couple hours, so we did an encore in a developer theater. And so in this presentation I want to do this session again and include all the questions and answers from all the sessions and different discussions I've had at Dreamforce. So this is interesting to everybody who may have seen it or may have missed the session. So if you've never heard of Progress DataDirect, the one thing that I'd want to share with the Dreamforce community and Salesforce.com shops is that Progress DataDirect connects any application on any platform to any data source. And you can see from the list, we have things like Hadoop Hive, Oracle, Postgres, SQL Server, a lot of relational databases, and Teradata and Sybase IQ for data warehouses. So we've built this, we have a breadth of driver support against different data sources. And we've taken our SQL expertise and we've developed ODBC and JDBC drivers for Salesforce.com, Database.com, and Force.com on that same trusted platform that's run over 300 ISVs. So how does DataDirect see Salesforce.com? Well, Salesforce.com has a very rich API and a data access query language called SQL, S-O-Q-L, and it's very capable. However, sometimes you just need SQL or SQL 92, and that's where DataDirect comes in. We've built SQL 92, ODBC, and JDBC drivers that make Salesforce.com and all the data in the platform look and feel like a relational database. So on today's agenda, we're going to talk about how this is possible. We have a couple of real-time demos to show you the driver in action, and we'll talk about some use cases that you may want to use in your organization. So how is this possible? When you hear that we have real-time direct SQL access to Salesforce.com's database, some people think that we're hacking into the back-end database behind the cloud, and I want to make it clear that's not the case. So what we do is, in this diagram, if we start at the top, in green would be your JDBC application or Java application, whether it's reporting, a data warehousing, or web application. And this diagram is the same for both JDBC and ODBC drivers. Same architecture applies. So if your application in green will make standards-based calls into the driver, which is the blue box in the middle. So when the request comes in to connect, the driver is going to connect. It's going to map the standard and custom objects in Salesforce.com to relational tables and columns locally into the driver, and we map that into schema files. And that's done using the SOAP API. And then let's say the application makes a SQL request. Maybe it does a SQL inner join using inner join syntax. Then the driver is going to take the inner join syntax and convert it into the equivalent SQL query and pass that down to the Salesforce.com API to execute it. And then in other cases, maybe you're executing a group by statement that has over a result set with more than 2,000 records. And in that case, the SQL API is not able to return the more than 2,000 results, so the driver will handle that internally. Will bring down the results and perform the group by transparently and return the results to the application. And the driver supports Database.com, Salesforce.com, and Force.com, and you can see that it implements 3 APIs behind the Salesforce connections. So it's got SOAP API, the bulk API, and metadata API. So depending on the request coming from the application, we'll translate to the appropriate API to service that request, and we support the latest versions of those APIs. And we release service packs to make sure that you're always connecting to the latest and greatest features and objects in Salesforce.com. So now I want to show you some real-time demos. And actually, one more comment before I go into the demos. This slide, I don't know if it looks complicated or not, but I want to be clear that the Salesforce.com, the JDBC driver is a single jar file, and the ODBC driver gets installed side by side with our Oracle, DB2, SQL Server, etc. The different drivers, so they'll look and feel like your premium standards-based drivers. for the real-time SQL demos, I have a picture of morning buns on the right, and I asked everybody in San Francisco, the Dreamforce, if they've heard of them. And one session I saw about 5 hands, and the second session I saw maybe 20. So I thought that everybody knew about them, but this demo, I'm creating a fictional business where I'm selling these morning buns to Starbucks across the United States, and I'm using Salesforce.com as my CRM for that fictional business. So let me show you what that looks like in Salesforce. So you can see here I've got a bunch of opportunities in Salesforce, and I'm selling morning buns across the country, and I've got different accounts depending on where the location is, and I've got about 60,000 of these I just generated for the demo purposes. And I'm selling these things for $1 a piece, so you can see different values in here. So let's say that my business wants to know, where am I selling more morning buns in maybe the cold weather months, like the winter months, versus the summer months. And so if we take a look at Salesforce.com, this is a data visualization tool, and it's SQL based, so it uses our Salesforce ODBC driver. It's called Progress Analyst Studio. This tool is a branded version of Tableau, and this is one of several data visualization tools out in the market. Things like TIBCO, Spotfire, ClickView, and MicroStrategy have tools in this space as well. So this is a standards-based ODBC SQL tool that I can plug into Salesforce, and there's no modifications or anything to Tableau to connect to an ODBC driver. So in this picture, you can see that you get a quick snapshot. There's worth thousands of words here that what our business looks like during this period of time. If you just take a look, you can see the details. We have a Bishop out here in California. This is the Bay Area we're looking at. Over here and out here east of California, we have Bishop. We sold about 70 morning buns. And in a town called American Canyon, we sold about 278. So these are the summer months. So if we were to take a quick look at the winter months and compare, get a quick visual view, you can see I have a filter by month, and you can see that our Bishop maybe in the winter months looks like we sold a couple more. We sold 160 in the winter, and you can see the different changes, and now it looks like Santa Rosa sold a lot more in the winter, 278. So you get these very visual, interactive, real-time insights, and it's directly against Salesforce.com. So to prove that this is directly in Salesforce.com, let's pick one of these places. Let's just take Bishop for example in the winter time. So in Bishop, I have the store number is 00487. So if I come in here and search for 00487, I'm going to look at my store and I'm going to update that data. So if I look at a win in the winter months, let me pick the opportunity name, and let's see, and I'm going to change this the value to something higher. Let's say we sold another 100 on top of that, and save that. Okay, so now let's go back to Tableau and refresh this. We have 160, so we expect to see 260 once I refresh it. Okay, so I'm going to refresh the report. And it takes a couple seconds, just the 60,000 opportunities. I didn't put any filters on what to bring in. So what the SQL tool does is it brings all the opportunities into analytical structures in memory, so that you can work with the data kind of like we showed you. And now you can see that we have 260 morning buns, and it was 160 earlier. So this data is being pulled directly from Salesforce.com. There's no staging database, so it's your traditional one version of the truth, and it's a unique value that ODBC drivers and direct SQL access can bring to your intelligence across your organization. And this is one example of a data visualization tool. So to see how this works, let's take a look at the connection itself. And I'll edit the connection. And you can see here that I've got my custom SQL here. So I'm doing SQL 92. I have a select some columns, and I'm using a substring function here because the tool does not render zip codes that are greater than 5 digits. So I use a substring function to get the data in a form that the application or tool can render. And then I select from different columns and I do a join across accounts, opportunities, and user tables. And I'll show you, I have the SQL in this slide later so it's easier to read. But then this is the data source name, Salesforce DF12. And you can see here, this is configured similar to any ODBC data source, and I've basically got my connection information to my account, and I've specified a location for my schema mapping files. And that's really all there is to the connection. And I connect with my user ID here, the salesforce.demo@progress.com, and password plus a security token. So it gets the, I have permission and access to see what my Salesforce account can see, and only those objects. So click OK. And now I want to show you a demo of the real-time cache built into both the ODBC and JDBC drivers. In this case, I'm going to use JDBC driver because it's deployed out on Heroku, which is the Salesforce platform as a service. And you can develop applications and deploy them out on Heroku in Java. And I've deployed our JDBC driver out there. And to show you just the SQL, this is a simple web application that lets me execute SQL 92 statements against it. And I'll just do a simple query here. You can see it fetched back about 1,800 rows in about 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. And to demonstrate the real-time cache built into the driver, it's created codelessly through SQL statements. And so just to show you the grammar here, it's I'm creating a cache and it's per object in Salesforce. And you can get you can even create a filter and just do certain objects, certain record in this object. So in this case, I'm creating a cache on both the account and opportunity table, which are part of my inner join statement. And I'm going to specify a refresh interval of 1 minute. So let me create these. And the way that works is if I execute a query, and then if I execute again within that 1 minute interval, it's going to query the data against the local cache versus going out to Salesforce. And then after that 1 minute period, if you issue a query, it's going to go out to Salesforce and just pick up what changed between the last time you had refreshed the cache. So it's a very powerful cache in terms of performance and in terms of saving web service calls against the Salesforce. So the first time I run this query, it's going to populate the cache. And now if I run it again within that 1 minute interval, it's going to query the data locally. So you can see it fetched the data in about 2.8 seconds, and now I ran it against the cache, and it took 18 milliseconds. So it didn't make any web service calls out to Salesforce. It queried all the data locally. So you can see the performance improvement went from 1,000 milliseconds to just 18. And again, this is running out on Heroku, so there's the added benefit of, in Heroku you might be running in one platform or cloud, and it's going to be accessing data in Salesforce, which may be a separate cloud. So you've got, you know, a cloud to browser hop. So the cache is a very compelling for performance in the platform as a service environments like Heroku. And so that's the caching feature. Let me go back to the slides and show you some of the code behind that. The SQL here again is from Tableau to generate all those geographic reports of the data and where we're having the wins and losses by zip code. So you can see that again, that's the substring function. You can see the join across user and account and opportunity table. And in Heroku, I have all the code out on my blog, and it shows exactly what we're measuring, and it shows that the SQL and JDBC calls being made and when the stop and start is. I also included some of the code to generate the data in Salesforce, and I use it's all done in Java and JDBC drivers. So what I do is I push a bunch of dummy data using the bulk load capabilities of the driver, and it's basically using JDBC batches, which are, you know, JDBC compliant code, but the driver can leverage those and behind the scenes transform them into the Salesforce bulk API, so you can improve performance and save on web service calls. So you're doing a bulk insert. And that's how I got those 60,000 opportunities in there. Now to talk about some use cases that you can use, I broke them down by different types of applications. And I want to mention that in DataDirect we're vendor neutral, so this is not necessarily an endorsement of certain vendors or technologies. It's just some of the use cases you can use and that I've seen. The data integration space. Now, in the data integration space, a lot of organizations may have a platform already in-house, like an Informatica Power Center, and you can plug in our ODBC driver into that and continue to use Salesforce similar to any other relational source. And similar to that, we have the other tools, and Pentaho, for example, is a JDBC application that you can that does data integration, your ETL, ELT type of operations, and you can plug in our JDBC driver into the Pentaho data integrator. So those are some of the use cases. In addition, if these tools may not have a bulk workflow to do bulk loads, the driver can codelessly do a bulk load for insert into Salesforce from one of these platforms. So again, it's very plug and play, and uses existing infrastructure to perform a lot of the same operations your organization is used to writing workflows for against relational sources. In the business intelligence space, a lot of these tools are very powerful for doing things like, let's say you have your different sections of business. So Salesforce.com might have some CRM data, but you need to run reports against maybe finance or against your ERP system, and you get that 360-degree view of your business through reports. And a lot of these tools have that kind of federation layer where you can create real-time reports against different systems through SQL access, ODBC and JDBC. In addition, you can also do reports, with direct SQL access to Salesforce. You can have real-time reports and dashboards, and those can exist side by side with data that may be in a warehouse that you might have pulled down from a data integration tool above. Another common use case is the data visualization scenarios with the Tableau we talked about, and I showed you in the demo earlier. So these are, and also there's SAS for statistical analysis, and various tools for BI that you can plug and play. And then in the database federation space, you have Oracle and SQL Server have their federation technologies that you can plug in ODBC drivers, and this basically makes the Salesforce data look like it exists in Oracle, so you can write PL SQL against Salesforce.com data, or maybe SQL Server, T-SQL for link server, and it makes that data look like it exists in your relational database without having to move it, so you don't have to duplicate your data, again back to that one version of the truth. And similarly, Sybase has a tool, ECDA, and different systems, ERP systems, like I think Sage has an external ODBC system, so you can do lookups and queries against Salesforce, and it's just plug and play out of the box against your existing infrastructure. And then for business analysts who might want to run ad hoc queries and do some more complicated one-off analysis, they can plug and play our ODBC and JDBC drivers into their favorite tool, and I have a list of here that commonly used tools that I've seen, and most popular are the Microsoft Office tools like Microsoft Access and Excel, and you can plug and play directly into Salesforce with that. Another use case, or maybe you might want to develop a web application outside of the Salesforce platforms, so you can plug into Hibernate, ASP.NET, and your Oracle frameworks for building different applications outside of Salesforce that need to access that data in real time through SQL. So these are some of the use cases sorted by types of applications that you can use. Now, and back to the why do we want to use real-time SQL access to Salesforce? So to summarize some of the things we talked about in the demos and use cases, really the big value is that you can instantly connect thousands of existing applications to Salesforce.com through SQL 92 access with ODBC and JDBC drivers. And you saw the use cases earlier, and all those can plug and play into Salesforce.com. And you don't have to have a one-off adapter or connector. You can use the same connector with multiple applications to get that same view into Salesforce at the same API versions, and it sees the same objects. Then there's a unique data connectivity with the real-time SQL access to Salesforce. Since it's a software as a service, it doesn't have the same restrictions as you might have with an on-premise tool. So for example, maybe a CRM on-premise might have a live database that's sized for a certain workload, so you're restricted from accessing in real time for real-time analytics or maybe batch processing to do a big pull. But with Salesforce, there's not that same restriction because it's a hosted environment. It's a software as a service, and you make calls through an API where the Salesforce has the resources to service your calls. So you can do the kinds of things you weren't able to do before. Like in the demo, we did the real-time analytics in the middle of a day when it's live Salesforce instance, and I can pull these against Progress Software's Salesforce instance if I had a tool I want to do real-time analytics. And I frequently pull Excel reports in real time if I need to. In addition, if I want to do a big pull for the day, I don't have to wait for a certain hour, but I can pull it any time during the day as long as I have my web service through my enterprise Salesforce subscription, because I have the calls to handle that. So that's unique with the software as a service CRM, and I think that makes ODBC and JDBC that much more valuable in terms of use and when you can use it in SQL Access. And then finally, making Salesforce.com data available to everyone. I think that Salesforce.com data is very important to every business, and making it available to everybody. You don't have to know the API to write applications or queries. Your business analyst using Microsoft Office can use Salesforce. Your data warehousing teams can use it. In addition, anyone with a data visualization tool. Basically, everybody across the business can get access to that really important data and really increase usage and adoption of Salesforce.com data. So in summary, to learn more, I encourage you to download a trial of the drivers, and you can try it out yourself with your existing applications, or maybe you want to start a new project and you can get a trial from our website, DataDirect, www.datadirect.com. And for use cases, you can visit our blog, and we've written up several very specific use cases to each application and included screenshots and step-by-step tutorials. And I think those are very helpful to organizations to get started very quickly. And again, we had a presence at the conference, and we had a booth in the expo floor, and we had a presence in the developer center, and we had two developer theater sessions and a formal session. And we talked to a lot of people, and really excited about everybody's interest in SQL 92 Access. And of course, we encourage you to be social through Twitter and Facebook. And at this point, we don't have a real-time Q&A, but I wanted to go back through some of the questions that I got in the sessions from the Dreamforce attendees and to kind of ask them and answer them. So the first question in one of these sessions was about creates, inserts, updates, full CRUD support into Salesforce. And the answer is yes, we do support through the metadata API. We allow you to create remote objects. In fact, you can even create local views on top of Salesforce tables and objects. So we do support updates and deletes as well, in addition to upserts through our bulk APIs. So we do support a full CRUD, and as well as fetch and select support. In terms of the next question was around if a developer is working with our drivers, do they need to know SQL? And again, to reiterate, the driver is SQL 92 compliant, so we take care of all the translations into SQL and when to push them down and when the driver handles it. So really, this tool is designed for people with the expertise, SQL 92 expertise, and people comfortable writing or have experience writing in Java and C or .NET or whatever their platform of choice is, and they can just continue using their existing skills and platforms and plug in the drivers to extend that without having to learn something new if you're new to Salesforce. Next question was around if the driver is subject to some of the governor limits in Apex. And the answer is no, we're not subject to the same governor limits in Apex because those are specific to the Apex runtime, whereas our drivers run outside it, and we use the Web Services API. So you can run all the you can run as many queries simultaneously as you need to outside of that. The only and then the SQL limits of, let's say, for the group by and aggregate functions, for example, if you have limit of 2,000 records, our driver will return more than that. So we're not limited by some of the SQL interfaces either. The driver will handle any SQL 92 request that SQL is unable to service. The next query is around, we've got several questions around joining arbitrary columns. I know in SQL you can join columns that have a relationship already defined. What about columns that may not have a relationship? Well, in those cases, the driver is going to do that join for you, so you can do it against arbitrary columns as well as predefined joins and relationships in Salesforce. So the answer is yes. The next question is similar about does the driver support subqueries? And the answer is yes. If it's SQL 92 compliant, the driver will handle that subquery and return the appropriate results back to your the calling application. The next question was around whether the driver can be used with Cognos dashboards, and the answer is yes. The Cognos has several SQL 92 components for BI, and you can plug in the ODBC driver to run reports as well as dashboards and anything from the Cognos BI infrastructure through ODBC drivers, and that's SQL 92 compliant, as well as JDBC where Cognos supports that. The next question was around whether the drivers can work with how do we get it to work with Toad. So that the tool, and I'm not a Toad expert, but I believe that the Toad for data analysts is one that supports the third-party ODBC connections, and that might be one to start with. And if you're using Toad for Oracle, you can either get that tool or you can set up a data federation through a gateway, and then you can query Salesforce through Toad for Oracle as well. So there's multiple options with the SQL access. The next question was around the real-time caching, and can the cache refresh on its own? The answer is no. The cache will refresh when the refresh interval has been exceeded, like that 1 minute in the example I showed earlier. If 1 minute has passed, the driver is going to go out and pick up the changes. It doesn't have an independent process. It listens for times and goes out and picks up the changes. So that's how the caching works at the time of this presentation. The next question was, so if you use the driver can the driver work with Informatica and Oracle Business Intelligence? And the answer is yes. The question was around because the Informatica has options, but those options don't allow you to have real-time connectivity into Salesforce from OBIEE, which is the Oracle Business Intelligence. So SQL 92 access through ODBC allows you to use both Informatica for your data warehousing step, as well as a real-time connection into Salesforce from Oracle, so you can model your RPD and your metadata directly against Salesforce without the data warehousing step. So you have the option of using both, which I think was very compelling to the person who asked that question. Another question was, how does the driver handle transactions? If an application starts a transaction, how will the driver handle that? And by default, the driver will throw an error when a transaction is started, since Salesforce does not support transactions, but the driver can be configured to ignore those, and that way a workflow can continue to run against Salesforce without throwing the error, and the developer will be able to handle that appropriately, understanding that the transaction was ignored, and on how to handle rollbacks and things like that. So that summarizes the questions I got during the sessions, and we had a great time at Dreamforce in terms of talking to everybody in the different Salesforce shops about SQL 92 Access, and we encourage you to continue to talk to us through social media or contact us through the website or give us a call. And I thank you for your time and listening to the webinar.